dispelling myths, and managing expectations in marriage. So the myths, I'm sure we all know, I don't want to, have to, but at least by the time we go into the conversation, you understand what they're talking about. So I'm going to put the question to them. The first part of it is the dispelling myths, and then I'll put it to the older in marriage first, and then so we'll go back and forth. And while they're speaking, you might have a need to ask a question because we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Now, for those who would not want to ask the questions directly and want to be anonymous, you could just go on to www.slido.com, and the passcode is #marriage. You can post your questions there, and then we'll read out. Okay, so you have 2 minutes for this, 2 minutes each for this part of the question, which is the dispelling myths. So I would ask you and say, in your own time, which is a bit of a while ago, right? In your own time, what were the myths that were, flying around then? And how did it impact on your relationship? This is before marriage now.
Okay. Praise God. Good morning, everyone. So the myth that I would like to speak about is the myth that the in terms of, how I dispelled that myth as a young girl who was, I was 20 when I met him, and we married when I was 24. It was really clear to me that Adam wasn't complete when God brought him to him. Because if you think about it, God took out the rib and out of Adam and put him, and created him, but brought him to him, and he wasn't that completeness. That was not him complete. It's really about who he was in terms of the things he spoke about, his aspirations, his vision for the future. So he may not have had much, but he had a focus. He was focused on solving a problem. He always spoke about that problem. We had sessions where we would just pray about the future and write down things about our future, many of which we see today. So much so that it's now our own family charter, and that is how our children have also taken it forward. If I put it back to our today life, every 6 months, even with our children, we have a family visioning session where we're talking about this is what we wanted to do in this year, with God helping us, and it's with prayer and fasting and things like that. And this is how far we've come. What could we have done better? So I think that he had a vision and he had an aspiration, and most importantly, beyond anything else.
So the takeaway here is you had vision. You were not looking for ready-made. You wanted a man that had a vision, had a focus, and, as they say, potential.
Potential, exactly.
Okay, thank you. So, but I did you?
I'm not sure whether she was talking about me, so I was lost. The myth at about that time was also that the woman didn't have to do much. The woman was not, anyway, it started from the position or the understanding or the culture that the woman was not even equal anyway. So she didn't bring much to the table. I was raised, my parents got divorced early, but that's not the point. My mother was a 9-to-5 woman. She worked, and I saw her work hard, even after she divorced my father. So in my head, somewhere, I had to marry a professional. I just had a picture that when I had friends around in my house, when we get together and we're talking main things, we're talking politics, we're talking business, then my wife is going up and down, bringing drink, bringing food. I didn't like that picture. So for me, the picture was my wife must be right in the midst of us, contributing to the conversation. That was what framed my mind about a woman.
Fantastic. So I'm going to let you hold that thought. So for you, it was potential, not ready-made man. For you, it was all those women are seen and not heard. They're not equal to men. That wasn't what you were going to take on because of your background. So your background formed you in that manner. Okay. So I'll come to you guys. think we're doing good on time. So 2 minutes. Who will go first? Okay. So share.
Okay, for me, mine is also similar to hers, because the myth then was you can't marry your mate. And I looked at it, and yes, you can marry your mate. Says who? Even for Adam and Eve, I don't know how many days interval they had before God created Eve. So I didn't see it as an issue. And when I met Yinka in this case, we were both at UBA. I was 7. He was already a permanent staff. And it was just, I would say love at first sight. But when we met, I knew, okay, I would like to tell my dad that we're same age. Even my friends had issues that we were same age. But I looked at it and I said, oh, I could manage this. The guy is very old at heart. He was very old. I remember days at UBA then that everybody, I mean, all of us was listening to the R&B. He will be listening to Obey. He wears Adire way back then. And I'm like, everybody wants to wear jeans tight. So I knew that it's different. And it wasn't so much of an issue.
So the myth then was, don't marry your mates. People were doing Aristo. Huh?
Yes.
They'll tell you, madam, my mates, young guy, you can't even relate, because they'll tell you that women are more mature than men, right? So most women will want to date up, right? Yes. Rather than down. Okay. So.
So for me, myths are generally misconceptions, right?
Absolutely.
So for me, I grew up in Ekiti, right? And my parents are both, my dad was Ekiti and my mom is Ekiti. So the myth around us then is, an Ekiti man cannot marry an Ijebu woman. So when I met her, and she's from Ijebu, right? And so I said, hey, this is where I'm staying. There were other Ekiti options, right? But
so many.
But I dispelled that myth. Eventually I broke the news to my dad. I broke it to my mom that, guess what? Sorry, I won't marry an Ekiti girl. I'm going to go to Ijebu. And my dad was like, Ijebu and Ekiti won't shake back, ball. So, but look at us today. Yeah, so.
Thank you very much. I'm Ijebu, by the way. So, you made a good decision. Okay, so the other side of our topic is the weightier one. Because that's the one where, say, when the pastor in the morning said, you have carried, you carry what you carry, whatever it is you find after the reception and the night party, the morning after, right? So all of the stories, oh, I promise you I can cook, I can this, I can that, the reality. So I'd imagine that you had expectations when you were going into marriage. So I just want you to share, just tell us, those expectations, did they measure up? And if they didn't, how did you manage them? Maybe 1 or 2 instances.
Okay. So, of course, everyone has expectations going into marriage. Marriage is a blank check. You never know what you're going to get. That check may very well bounce for all you know. But I think in our own case, thankfully, I think that the expectation I had was really that because we had built a friendship from the very beginning, it was really about seeking God. And there are 2 things that, when I was thinking about this, really about pursuing purpose and fulfilling destiny. And for us, that was, one of the first things that we thought about, even as we came together. It was about pursuing purpose and fulfilling destiny. So thinking that, progress was always going to be incremental was clearly an expectation that in reality doesn't work, because progress will not always be incremental. Progress sometimes is linear. So progress sometimes you step back in the real sense, to be able to propel forward in terms of progress. So I think that, yes, my expectation of marriage has been ultimately met. We're 26 years in December. But I think that most importantly, it is following God on this adventure, because that is what it is. You never, you can say, oh, you knew yourselves 10 years, you were in school and all of that. You never really know the person until you're living with that person, day in, day out.
Okay, so Staretta, let's be real. You've spoken, as I said, you're a boardroom guru, professional, like I can't marry someone that cannot have a conversation, right? But the truth of the matter is that Brother Adeji would have fallen in your hand at some point that, this guy, even if it was a matter of we will get here at this time, right? So man proposes, God disposes. I want you to give me an instance where he did not meet the expectation, but you're still together, which means that you managed it. But just so that it's more real for somebody who's like, okay, yeah, but can you give an instance that he did not, and it was a big issue before, you were able to resolve it?
So, okay, let me put it this way. I grew up in a background where my mother always ran a business. So my father was a civil servant and my mother ran a business. But even at that, she had strong economic power because her businesses were good. And so for me, even though the world would say, oh, the man should carry everything, it was never my expectation to carry everything. So the example I'm going to give you is economic. He went into business, right? And I was the one who was then in a 9-to-5 and having a monthly income. And there were times that, of course, there was not going to be income from day one in starting a new business or, for some time to come. But we managed ourselves. Again, I say that it comes with what you yourself have held on to. In holding on to the fact that I know that I didn't expect him to be ready-made in the first place. It was never a thing for us. Again, if I can use a real-life example, he lived in Surulere. He lived with his mom as at when we were about to get married. I grew up on Awolowo Road in Ikoyi. So I'm saying that it was never a thing, but I had friends who it was a big deal for them, right? It was never a big deal that I should support my husband. Because guess what? I tell you that we spent very many evenings and hours just planning and thinking about what we believed God wanted our family to look like, and praying about it and writing it and having that as our family charter. That was the vision of the future. When the Bible says that write the vision, make it plain, so that those that see it can run with it, it's very real. Because if you don't have that vision in the first place, at the sign of the first trouble, it will all fall apart.
Okay. So, you want to, yeah.
Things happen for us quickly. Even though we came from what you consider middle class families. We were just two young people. I was 27, she was 24. Two young people who just took on life without much guidance. I mean, we wanted to go to school, we paid for our MBA work. I won't tell you how I feel and she passed sometimes. But those were also things that men have to deal with. Those are myths that you're more brilliant than your wife doesn't necessarily follow. That you would rely on her intelligence many times, because two is always better than one is also reality. So we set out, she set out as a career person, or we agreed that she was going to set out as a career person. I was going to venture at some point. I rose early, became executive director of a big insurance company at 35. But then, after that, thought, okay, it was time to venture. Now, my very first time to venture was a disaster. For about 3 years, I didn't earn a dime. And she was the one who brought home the things. And we had debts to pay. But she never, the Spirit of God that is in her, that I married anyway, never allowed her to rub it in my face one day.
together our questions, right? Because they've been open-minded. I mean, they've shared. And the instructions to them was, please, we're not going to come here and pretend. We're going to say it as it is, so that people can see the real-life experiences and learn from it. So, managing expectations. You are age mates now, Abi?
So we got married. So he said I'm Ijebu. So I'm from Lagos, but Ikorodu. Ijebu, Ikorodu, you know. And Yinka is from Ekiti. And the Ekiti that is from, when you get to Ekiti, you now travel to Ekiti. So I had so much expectations that I expect, for us, we were in love and we got married. There was no, this is what we want to be. We didn't have anything. We didn't write anything down. So we got married, and when after the first month, it was done on me, oh my God, we didn't say a lot of things. We didn't discuss so many things. Not children. Yes, we both knew we were Christians and we will remain Christians. I think that was all that was common. But my expectations was so much that he most times asked me that I should just have married a white man. Buki, I'm from Ekiti. That is the truth. I can't start buying flowers. I don't know how to do it. So when you see the flower, tell me where to go and buy it. And I like, Nika, you spoiled the fun. I can't tell you, I want to go to Double Ford. Then it was Double Ford those days. And you now plan. And now, no, you spoiled the fun. And it was a great challenge because he was honest. And I took him to be who he was or who he is now. But it's changed. It's changed. It's changed, and it's been good.
Is she right?
Women can never be wrong. So for me, expectations. It's, when you go into marriage, sometimes you don't even have expectations. Just like you said, I saw her. She walked into the bank. I had a couple of girlfriends around. I saw her and I said, I'm over and done with it. This lady. And that was it. So when you talk about expectation, it's even difficult for me to measure and say, this is what I expected or this is not what. But, you can then drive the expectations home by saying, okay, what were you ever imagining that, marriage would be like? I thought marriage would be, man will be high up there, the woman will be there just supporting. But in my own case, it wasn't like that. The reality wasn't like that. We were mates. As a matter of fact, we are age mates. So expectation around that fell, yakata. And then when you now even talk about earnings, when we started, maybe she was 7, I was already working. But guess what? Buki was, all the way back then, she has always been business savvy. I was never business savvy because what my parents taught me was, as a man, you must have an home address, you must have an office address. So you don't go around saying you are doing business. My dad was a typical civil servant. My mom is the same. So I felt, whatever I was doing, I must be employed. I must be working somewhere where I'm paid my salary, and I'm okay with it. So when we started, Buki was earning much more because she will earn from her salary, and then she will make money from business. So you see, expectations then begin to again, So I think it's about understanding yourselves and believing that even when the other party is any more than you, it doesn't imply that she then has to grow up with pride and disrespect you as the husband, which I give her, And the other part is when you are then a man and you are not earning as much as she is, you also need to drop your ego and understand that sometimes you'll have to pay the rent and be nice to her. As a matter of fact, I remember when I met Buki, I was driving a Volkswagen B2, 1974 model.
That the sound system was more expensive than the car.
So, and I remember the person you were dating then was driving a V-boot.
Mercedes.
So, when I show up with my B2, struggling with it sometimes, I'm like, will I ever be able to catch up? So, managing expectations, I think is really more about you understanding that God has given you. You had prayed, you had waited, and then you are believing that God is also, by His grace, giving you a true friend that can even support you when you don't have.
So on that note, we're running out of time. I wish we had more time. Thank you. I wish we had more time, but we have to go to the Q&A, and I foresee that would take more time as well. So if we have any questions on Slido, can we have them up? And we can as well take questions from the audience while we're waiting. So, and pretty much, so the topic has been dispelling myths and managing expectations. We know that we might have other questions, that might flow into other areas, but if we can just limit our questions, at least for today, to those areas. And also, if you want to take from anything that they've said, maybe you want them to share a bit more. If you're not very clear, they'll be willing to do that. And Pastor Ben has said that everybody that is here, that is in a marriage, is on the panel. The only difference is that you're not here. So be ready to be given the microphone to also answer some questions. So the first question we have here is, so that will go to, yes, Sister Etta, what gave you the idea of his potential? 30 seconds.
Okay, so like I said, the things we spoke about, he wasn't concerned about where the next party was, where the best nightclub was. He didn't even know where they were anyway. But he was concerned about, from the day I met him, he always spoke about insurance. He always spoke about insurance penetration, solving that as a problem. For me, that was somebody who, if given a platform, could do great things. So his potential was clear to me because he was very, very serious-minded, very focused on doing serious things, and just wanted a family that would glorify God above all else. Like he said, he came from a divorced home. Many of the things he learned, he got mentors and he put himself under people to be able to learn how to be a father to his children. So I saw that potential there.
Thank you, Sister Etta. Can we have a question back up? Okay. So any one of you can take this. Is there anything as a perfect partner?
Can I deal with that? Marriage, I believe, marriage is a very important agenda for God. I also believe that marriage or the family is also on the top of the agenda for the devil. I think that marriage is a journey to perfection. We focus on the wedding. The wedding is the beginning of the marriage. Many times, we as Christians are agents of the devil in our marriage. Because, as I said at the beginning, marriage is important to God, is also important to the devil. Of course, important to God in the sense that it mirrors the relationship between Christ and the church. Important to the devil because he wants to make sure that he brings it down. So, there can be a perfect partner because you bring the perfection. Efosa, many of you don't know her name is Efosa. Efosa brings my perfection to me. So the man you see today has a lot of Efosa's input. The woman that you see today has a lot of my input. And that's what you see as possible perfection, but it's coming from two imperfect people.
Thank you. Word. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So can we take another question? This one, I don't know if it's part of our myth or expectation. We can all read, right? So anybody that wants to answer can decide to answer. If we have no takers, maybe we can. Can we move on and come back to that one?
Okay, I'll answer that
I
one.
think the question has
Answer the others, I'll answer that one.
Okay, so we'll leave it for last. So, what do you do when your partner keeps repeating the same mistake over and over again? Will you guys take that?
Okay, let me take that. We are all humans, right? And if you relate that to our being and God, who He is, we keep going back to Him and asking for forgiveness. I'm not sure there's anyone here that will say, oh, I've gone beyond sin. And every time you go back to Him, He's always magnanimous enough to give you a chance. So the truth is, just as we know that marriage is a journey, just as we heard Pastor say in the morning, that even for him, 35 years, they still go for counseling. I'm not sure there is anything wrong with someone having, you have a mistake, you do it again. But again, you have to also look at yourself. That this thing they say I'm doing all the time. Can't you, even as a Christian, you should also pray about it, that this is my fault. Let's say, for example, anger. You should also, pray about it and believe that God would help you. But on the other side, if you are the party that is facing the challenge, you must also help the other party to pray and believe that God will help.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How do you contain or manage your home? I hope this idea of marriage where so many ungodly/worldly things happen, with 2 words each, how do you survive every phase? So this is just generally speaking, right? So how do you contain or manage your home? How do you survive every phase? Maybe you would have to just apply it to an instance. Do you have any example of maybe, how do you manage? Has been a phase that you want to share with us, how you managed? I think the word says ungodly and worldly things happen.
I think that and without one repeating oneself, in all honesty, I think that there are many misunderstandings of this thing called marriage or family. I will dare to say, if the 2 people in a marriage do not have a relationship with the manufacturer of marriage, they cannot understand the purpose, and therefore there will be abuse of it. If you don't understand the purpose of something, you would abuse it. It's like using a star screwdriver to unscrew a flat screw. And unfortunately, marriage, part of the agenda of hell, is we have sold marriage as many things. Oh, we're meant to be happy. My wife will tell you there are many times I was the source of our unhappiness. Just like sometimes she was the source of my own unhappiness. Marriage is not just 2 people. Marriage is 3 beings. If that third being is not the anchor, you would mess it up and you would lose it. And there were times when we had to get to the point where, there was a time when we were going to divorce. But there were times we had to get to the point when we decided that we cannot, this is a ministry. that God has given us. I believe strongly that it's my ministry. And I'm sure, and that's how she takes it as well. So my point is, if you understand that there is a call or a responsibility to God on this matter, then maybe we'll look at things differently. When we got married, it was like Christians never divorced. At that time, 25 years ago, divorce was very rare in the church. Christians got married and it was not, people just, but now you're seeing it differently, right? But what has brought us through those difficult times is just the grace of God and understanding that there is that you owe God to do things right.
And I think that even in going through really turbulent times, in fact, we got to a point where we had a mantra, and once it heated up, we would say, we're on the same side. Remember, we're on the same side. We're on the same team at the end of the day. It's like playing for the, when you score an own goal, you're scoring for the other team. And when you come to the point where you are, if it's not to do with physical harm, where you are coming to the point where, I'm walking away and all of that, you are scoring for the other side. And so for us, we would always start, even for really difficult conversations, we will start with, we are on the same side. Let's establish that. What we're trying to do here is even come to a point of agreement or disagreement about an issue. And that is okay too. If you both agree to disagree, that's fine. But specifically to this question, I think that as husband and wife, father and mother, you determine the tone in your home. So I don't get that part where it's saying in marriage, ungodly and worldly things are happening. If you are the gatekeeper and you are the one who says, thus far and no more, it is not going to go past my front door. It's not going to come into my own space. You determine what you want to see, which is why for us, it's important, because for the next generation, you can pray with them all you like or tell them all you like. It is how you are actually living that they're going to take with them.
Thank you. So, the takeaway, what I get from but I did, you said, and I guess we'll still probably come back to that. Your point is, do we really understand what marriage is? It's not about two people, I like you, and then of course we're a marriageable age, there's pressure, we have money to have a wedding, and let's just cohabit. Your own point is, if you go to the manufacturer to say, how did you make me? What is my purpose, my use? That means that you're taking the instructions from the right source, and it's very likely that you would go wrong because you're still connected, threefold cord. Okay, thank you for that. Now, we'll take the next question. Can we have the questions back up? Okay, so I think that we're told you have to hear from God. How did you know she or he was the one? We had a conversation before we came here, so I want you to take that. Did you hear from God?
I clearly heard.
Mm-hmm. You heard?
Yes.
Yinka. How was the voice?
How was it?
Yinka.
Yeah.
Bookie's the one.
That's a big lie. But hearing from God, for me, reality, my own self, I saw her, I knew that's the person. But of course, like I said, it's something that I'd engaged God on, from way before I saw her. So, but hearing from God, it depends on how you hear from God. Some hear from God by, going through, no, reading the Bible, some hear, by word of advice from someone else. Some hear, by engagements even with the other party. But in my own case, you're asking about...
how did you hear?
I told you.
You saw.
I told you.
There was a knowing.
There was a knowing for me. There was a clear knowing.
A word of knowledge.
Word of knowledge. That's the woman. Interesting. Because I think that this person, when people come and say, God told me you are my wife, I heard, and so I'm sure that's where the person is coming from, that must there be the voice that you will hear? And if you have not heard that voice, should you continue? So he said he heard. Did you hear?
No.
You didn't hear? You just followed him.
So, in my own case, like he said, I was dating someone else. And then the guy was Shekiri, I think. Inka was Yoruba. No, the guy is Ijo. My boss was Shekiri in the office. And because he's elderly, you know how UBA was then. So he was like a father figure in the office. And the man would tell me, said there was no cell phone then. So the guy would call, the guy was working at Shell in Port Harcourt. So he would call, and my boss would say, Buki's not around, bam. And I was saying, Mr. Eda, why did you do that? He said, no, didn't you see that boy in the cubicle? That's the person God has told me you must marry.
The cubicle,
it was a teller. He was a teller. And I'd taken the other guy home, to be honest. He has met my parents. And by the time Yinka came, in fact, I can't remember when Yinka proposed. But he told me the day he met me was when he said, I want to marry you. So it was funny because when Mr. Eda kept saying, just look inward, Buki, why are you going far? Save your parents the stress of speaking English in their old age. And he kept, and I saw that, I mean, it's not a yardstick for choosing partner now. But people see us now like, oh my God, this is match made from heaven. I didn't hear from God, but I guess Mr. Eda, that's my boss,
God
really.
spoke through Mr. Eda. So that settles it, that it's not like there has to be an audible voice. It can be from, word of knowledge. It can be from somebody who is under the guidance of God. And so please, if you have, it doesn't mean that you have to hear. Let us not be waiting to hear. There are other ways to know. And as we said this morning, you can even talk to your pastor about it. Maybe he can even hear, your pastor, even your parents. And honestly, if you even really want to hear, I'm sure God has a way. He'll communicate with us one way or the other. Okay, so.
Can I say that I did not hear from God? And I was Christian. I am Christian. We were Christians. But I think the important thing was that we shared a lot about the future together. We talked a lot about the future. I saw somebody who had huge plans. I saw somebody who fit into my own dreams. I had another friend, a very close female friend, who was also Christian, who in fact was, working. She was in university. She was a youth corper. She was in university when we met. And she knew that I was very much into Henrietta. And she said, oh, what does she bring to the table? Because she was working, she had a car, she was already working in a financial institution. And I said, what you see today is not what I see tomorrow. And that's it. So I didn't hear from God, but it was just a lot of affinity. And I believe that was led by the Holy Spirit.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question. So she met the expectations. In fact, she overmet it. Because you wanted a professional.
See, like I said, we met when we were young.
Yes.
We only had dreams. So, for instance, her first job, her youth corps, in fact, I was involved in her getting to serve in UBA at that time.
The same UBA.
Maybe UBA is a matchmaker. Wise men and wise women bank with UBA.
That's true. That's a slogan. That's very true. So please, if you have a job interview, UBA, consider them.
So the other things that we did together was we talked about life. So we decided that we were going to go to school together. She was not, that professionalism or that guru that you see today was inside her then. And we only had to start to work together for that person to emerge. So we went to MBA school together. Now, at the time we were going to to school in management school, there was no money for one person. And it would have been easy for me to say, my mom and herself, in fact, came to me and said, why don't you go and leave her? And we were already married, in fact. Why don't you go and then leave her? The selfish man in me would have been okay. But again, the grace of God helped me to say, no, we will go together.
And there was no money.
And there was no money. So that I'm just saying that, we kept investing together. I'll say another quick one. When we were married, early in the marriage, we lived in the Gambia. In the Gambia, there were a lot of Nigerian professionals, mostly sent by the Nigerian government, technical assistant. All the Nigerians we knew, their wives were teachers. They were teaching in Gambian schools. I said, God forbid, my wife cannot teach. Because I had the picture of a professional, which was not a teacher. Sorry. Wrong place, wrong saying. Wrong place, wrong saying. I withdraw that. But my wife, I just didn't have the picture of a teacher for my wife. I didn't have that picture. And so we went and talked to a professional firm, right, where she wanted to be.
Repentance accepted.
Thank you. So we had to go and look for a professional firm where she could, be a management consultant. And that was how she started her career.
Okay, so, while you were talking, okay, maybe because at some point I was also a student with my husband, and so I understand how important it is if you have the dream of going to school. It's even more interesting when you go married, because there's no story of time difference. You didn't call me. The person is going to school and doing classes and doing tutorials, and I say, you didn't call me, you called me. It can be a lot of pressure. And of course, even now when people say, okay, I'm going to school, you stay. You are thinking, go, I stay. 1 year, 2 years, what if you don't come? With the relationship. So I guess obviously that was a good one. But what I'm taking from what you're saying, honestly, is the fact that both of you are where you are because you both built yourselves. It's like you had a master plan and said, okay, you will be this, I'll be this, and we are going to build. So you invested in yourselves. You weren't waiting for, okay, nature will happen. And so where she was weak, you were strong. You helped. So what you are then telling the young men, or even those that are married, you can't, no ready-made. That's the point you made, right? That you can't. It's not about ready-made. If you want a professional wife, build her to be professional. Don't think that she brought it from heaven or something, because she might as well desire it, but might not be able to help herself. So you're saying that you sowed into her. This is a building. But I still keep wondering how at 27, you seem to have had a very good, when you say you were writing vision down, and this vision, you seem to have a good head on your shoulders, yet you say, your parents had separated, right?
Shade,
divorced.
It was just the grace of God, nothing else.
Amazing.
It was God that just helped one. And I think if I had met a girl who was also interested in the other things, I probably would have gone away anyway, because I think there were certain things
What do you mean gone away?
I probably would have just moved on. In her, I found somebody who could entertain my highfalutin dreams and who could, my intellectual potential, because it wasn't like I was extraordinary. It was just somebody who could respond to me intellectually. And we could together build these dreams. So we knew that even though we didn't have the money, we knew we were going to go to school. We had to go to do MBA anyway to be able to get the right jobs. When we came back, she said she wanted to work in Accenture. It was just the grace of God that opened the doors. So the point is, I wasn't an extra human being. I had dreams, and I found somebody who also had dreams. And we together were able to work. Let me say something. The Bible says, 2 is better than 1. It is true. There is nothing that I have wanted to do in this life that if I talk to her about, she doesn't add value to. And there's nothing that she wants to do that she doesn't talk to me that I don't find a way to add value to. So that is established. If you have a partner and you think, oh no, I would rather talk to my brother, or I'd rather talk to my people or somebody else, you might be losing the capacity. So a car that God has built for as a turbo engine, you want to run alone. Or you are at home and you are meeting the bills, but you are disallowing the potential in the other person. right, to come to play so that you can go further. So I think God just helped us. It wasn't like there was any extra.
So God helped you, and the verse that says that he who finds a wife finds a good thing, but doesn't stop there, and obtains favor from God. Okay, so my Ekiti man and the Ijebu lady.
I am also Ekiti.
You're also
so be careful.
Are you Ijo? You're from Benin. Okay. So
Ekiti men are good after all.
We will not argue that with you. So, Ekiti, Ijebu, that's your boss, just helped you, right? Make the right decision. And for you, your parents, I want to even, so now you talked about something which goes to parental consent, right? Your parents were diehard Ekiti man, marry Ekiti woman. Was it that easy when you said, I'm not going that way? Did you just say, okay, that's fine, It
wasn't. I remember my dad had a discussion with me. They actually summoned me. They asked me to come home. So I went home, and my dad was just making every effort with my other elder brother, because I have elder brothers that are twins. So the two of them were also home that day, and they were like, what is it that you can't see an Ekiti girl around you? And because I was more convinced than ever that this is where I was heading. So I told them that, sorry, this discussion would really be needless, because I'd made up my mind. I also remember that, when you talk about, engaging with your parents around, stuff like that. I remember when we were waiting, there were instances.
When you were waiting, what? Waiting for what?
We were married and children were not, it wasn't forthcoming. How did we?
How long do you wait? Do you remember?
7 years.
7 years. So I remember there were always discussions around, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? I remember when, now my elder brother is a pastor now, when Pastor Taiwo came and said he had a dream that he saw you carrying, there were children here, and then there were baby dolls there, that my wife was going to carry a baby doll. I said, sorry. Even if this woman never has
a child,
if she never has a child, that is where I'm sticking to.
Yeah.
And
Shade,
that discussion.
To buttress what Yinka said, when I met his parents, Daddy actually asked and spoke about his concerns that Ekiti lawa o, omo eko, and he went on and on about it, that now they've met me and they feel very comfortable. You understand? That was my first time of meeting them. And Shadi, to be honest, all of them, Yinka has 4 brothers. I think one married Oyinbo, so the other married Ekiti. My mother-in-law calls me the Ekiti girl and calls the other Ekiti people the Lagos girls. I'm not joking. And I would say that, okay, to the wait. When we were waiting and the baby wasn't forthcoming, and there was nowhere my mother-in-law, my grandmother, I lost my own mom early, didn't take us to. They would pray, they would do stuffs, they would ask us to come from UBA. Even on Friday, we'll close our work and go straight to Ekiti. They would take us to one pastor and all of that. And we just stayed together. I'm like, Yinka, if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, that's it. And when Yinka's brother had a dream that said there were babies and there were toys, and I went for the toy, and I can't remember what my brother-in-law said, and I said, if I'm not going to have a child because maybe God says that I won't make heaven having a child, so be it. And of course, my brother-in-law called my mother-in-law and said, enter in Badra for see the person you're going everywhere praying for. This is what she said. And I remember my mother-in-law calling me and saying, Buki, Wabimo, you have a child. Say amen, say amen. And I kept saying amen. But mommy, that's not what I meant. But this is what I'm saying, that child or no child, we're in it together. And thank God today.
Yeah. Now you have plenty. We thank God. Okay, so do we still have some questions that we can quickly, 5 minutes to go? I'm newly married and have a property before I got married. My parents don't want me to tell my husband because they don't know how he may react.
Full disclosure. So I think that in that regard, and they were husband and wife, and they were naked and they were not ashamed. There's a principle that we have operated over even before we got married. We've always had open accounting. Open accounting, he knows what I earn, I know what he earns. We have joint accounts. He can draw on anything, I can draw on anything. He knows everything about what I own, what he... So we generally even buy things together. But say for whatever reason, there's an asset that can be in both our names. He knows about it. There's nothing that I have that he does not know about. There's nothing that he has that I do not know about. So I will say to that person, if you are serious about having a marriage that is built on trust and on Christ, I would say full disclosure. Tell him. And if somebody is intimidated because you own property before you are getting married, then there's a different question altogether you should be asking.
Let me say something. That in itself is a problem. You know, when people, there are all sorts of misunderstandings about men and misunderstandings about women. So generally, men have an ego. It is the truth. Men can easily be intimidated financially or any other way. Men are selfish. It is natural for a man to be selfish. I had to unlearn my selfishness. Women naturally are not selfish. They think about the other person or their children or the man. But men think about themselves first naturally. So I had to overcome my selfishness. So if a man feels intimidated by his wife's financial worth, it's something you can deal with. But it's something you can also help him deal with by being open. You know, so these are not, easy things to come by. But it is natural for you to feel somehow when and that's because you come from the understanding that you should be the one that has all the money, and it will not always happen like that. You know.
Thank you. So it's a mindset thing. Okay, next question. Okay, how do you handle physical change in your partner, be it aging or after birth?
Isn't there the physical change is happening on both sides now?
So, exactly. So the answer lies in the question, does it?
I mean, let me just provide a quick answer to that. When we started, I used to believe that your hair cannot grow more than 2 days. I mean, every 3 days I shave my hair. But after a while, my wife told me, why don't you leave your hair? I mean, so I looked at it, why will I leave my hair? It will be scratching me. Of course, I left it, and look at me today. I wasn't growing beards at some point, but my wife encouraged me to grow beards, and she has something to play with. So, and when I married, sometimes when some of Buki's friends send old pictures, and then I look at it, Buki, this is the way you used to be. Hey, the person you married 20-something years ago cannot remain the same person, the same stature after 3 boys. So there is nothing like, what are you dealing with? I didn't have pot belly before now. But now I have pot belly. She's dealing with it. So the same way I have to deal with a lot of more flesh.
Okay, thank you. Were there any interference from your families at any time? I don't know, I think we mentioned a bit of that, so maybe we could just go to the next question. When your partner is secretive about what he even earns, Okay, so we also talked about that just now about, okay, yes. From the former class, is it right to have sex after traditional wedding while waiting for the church wedding? Trad is our main wedding in Africa. No, it's not. We're in church. We said our main wedding in church is the marriage. So until you do your church wedding, you're not married. So that doesn't... Okay, so sex is one of the major issues in marriage, as it were. How do I get to a point where I don't have to get into the act because of compulsion?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So, and this is a conversation that we have, and we're still having, by the way. And the conversation is, sex is not what you do when you get into bed at night. Do you understand? The atmosphere for sex starts way before that. So it's not, oh, you just pounce on one girl or pounce on, that's not what sex is, or, as a married couple. It starts from way before. I am nice to him. I am thinking constantly about what he needs or what I feel he needs. Vice versa, he's thinking about what I feel I need. So sometimes I recall once I had been on a road show at work. I had gone for about 6 weeks, and we had done, been across the US on a road show. And he picks me up from the airport. And in fact, he had said to me, he had bought this very nice massage oil. So he actually, he had planned. I'm saying that sex is not something that is just for your, just because you're an animal.
So right from the airport, you knew that.
So he gave me this nice bath, nice massage. And so it is almost natural that no matter how tired you are, you will get there. Absolutely. So I'm saying that this sex that we're talking about, you invest in it. Which is what we have been talking about. Yes. You invest in it. And, if you invest in it right, you will get the outcomes that you expect. But if you do not invest in it, and you just think, I can call upon it at any point in time. Indeed, my body is his and his body is mine. But sometimes that body is very tired. And that body has a headache or whatever else, legitimate or not. My point is, sex is something you invest in. You invest in him the same way he invests in me. And that would be my answer.
So now the church knows that Brother Deji is not Brother Deji after all.
Yes,
but the point, just one point is, sex is an obligation. She owes it to me, I owe it to her. But for best outcomes, there are things that we have to get to. So I think it's just to get out of our mind that, if I don't feel like it, then it feels like, if you don't feel like it and she feels like it, then it's an obligation. So you've got to overcome that. It's something I withhold from him, or it's something that I withhold from her. It's a joint right. And then we get.
So your point is, it's almost like if you want to go on a drive, right? Do you want to go, if you go in a bus, you go in a car, you go in an SUV, how pleasurable will the ride be? I mean, you still get your destination. So if it's just to bang, and be on your way, yes, you will get that. But if you want to have a good experience while you're at it, then you have to invest. So some would say it starts from the morning, and over the day. So the calls, the WhatsApp, you're building something. Even the person will already get the memo that, today, this is just no. All this one. If you invest in something, you must get returns now, And the better your investment, the better your returns. Okay, all right. So our time is up, and we have not exhausted the questions. So Pastor Ben, it's your call. Do we stop here or we keep going?
Is there really go through the questions if there's something really qualitative that we need to.
Questions scroll. Maybe we can pick one or two. Okay, expectations. That's not what they're saying. With my partner, we did the sex on. No, so I think all those questions. So there's one that we need to. It says, at the panel saying, as singles, we should not have expectation. No, that's not what they said. They just said, whatever your expectation is, manage it. Things change a lot. So because I thought expectations help you know who one is to marry through God's help. We talk about the fact that when you marry, things can even change. So how do you manage what you see and communication. You know, so a lot of talking. That's why I kept saying, but it's as if you went to a school because you were teaching, you know, talk. So we need to have the singles need to have a lot of conversations. Leave all of the feelings and niceties. Have conversations. So that person, from the conversations, you probably have an idea of what to even expect. Because I think I said they didn't even, but you knew where they were coming from. Okay, so can we have the questions again? So the last two are on the oral sex. I don't like it, but I also don't know how to go about and avoid issues in marriage. Pastor Ben, you had said you were going to take that question.
Yes,
so
I will.
then the other question was about. How do you manage fathers that act as if they're single men, they don't play active roles in their children's lives? How do you manage disagreement with your spouse when things go against your own direction? I think you had talked about it, that you say, look, we're not going beyond this. We're on the same team, so even if we disagree, let us agree to disagree. So I think that would talk about the disagreement in terms of, know that even if we disagree, we're still on the same team and we don't want to score an own goal against our team. But these questions are more true. If your husband is a minister in the church, suddenly stop paying tithe because he says he doesn't believe in it again. According to him, it's a law of Moses. Pastor Ben will handle that. What's the biblical stance on the spouse acquiring assets in their name? So I think they talked about that. It was about assets in your name. If you want to do open accounting, there's a better way to go. Lagos traffic, wake up early in the morning, most time it's on it at night. How can you manage family morning devotion? Pastor Ben will take that. So I think that's about it, right? So yeah, that's about it. So Pastor Ben, you take the question on in the cases of physical violence, just against divorce, what if it continues to? Should she stay? So we'll just do this last week. Pastor Ben, the oral sex, the violence in marriage, should you stay? And the one about the minister who says they don't want her to pay tithe anymore. We have a mic. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Let's begin with the easier ones. Yes, go ahead. Let's clap for this.
No, not yet. Wait. Okay, so, Pastor, you said even after 35 years, you are still learning. Huh? So we're going to give our panel, thank you so much. You've made it really amazing, interesting conversations. So we want to leave you with something, because we're still learning, right? So I have 2 books here. The title of one of them is called Cleave. And since we're cleaving, as cleavers, I just thought, I'd like for you to have, we keep learning. The second one is restored. So you're supposed to do restored because you have to be restored before you then, So this is just to help your journey, to wholesomeness. Your journey is perfection because it's a journey, right? Thank you very much. And then to you as well, okay? Thank you.